Take a deep breath. We may take that for granted, but to 15 million Americans, it is something that doesn't come easy. 15.7 million people are diagnosed with COPD in America. 9.3 million people have been diagnosed with chronic bronchitis in the past year. 3.5 million were diagnosed with emphysema. COPD is the third leading cause of death in the U.S. Over 155,000 people die each year from COPD in the U.S. COPD is attributed to 1 in every 17 deaths. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD, refers to a group of diseases. These diseases cause airflow blockage and breathing-related problems. It also includes emphysema, chronic bronchitis, and some cases of asthma. COPD is primarily characterized by airway remodeling and airflow obstruction that shows progressive development. So, COPD is characterized by limitations of airflow in and out of the lungs. This limitation can be caused by a number of things. This includes the loss of elasticity in the air tubes and alveoli, the destruction of the walls that lie between the alveoli, thickening and inflammation of the lining of the air tubes, or the air tubes secreting more mucus than they should, causing them to clog. COPD is not fully reversible, but its progression can be slowed through treatment. One of the biggest causes of COPD is smoking. Up to 75% of people who have COPD smoke or used to smoke. Some other causes are secondhand smoke, air pollution, chemical fumes, and rare genetic factors. Long-term exposure to lung irritants are risk factors for COPD. Other than smoking, these lung irritants include air pollution, chemical fumes, dust from the environment or workplace, and secondhand smoke. COPD has no cure yet. Some treatments include lifestyle changes, like stop smoking or reduce lung irritants, or medications like bronchodilators or inhaled steroids. Some related disorders are bronchitis, in which the large air passages are inflamed or scarred, emphysema, where the alveoli or tiny air sacs are damaged, and pulmonary fibrosis, where the alveoli become scarred and stiff, which makes it difficult to breathe and get enough oxygen into the bloodstream. Despite a great deal of research that has been done on COPD, effective treatments are lacking. This is most likely due to the limited understanding of the pathogenesis, or how the disease develops. As of now, many mechanisms have been proposed to be the underlying causes for the development of COPD. These include oxidative stress, enzyme and gene expression imbalance, abnormal healing after damage, deranged remodeling, enhanced apoptosis, among others. People with even mild COPD often display physiological abnormalities. This leads to breathlessness and reduction of exercise tolerance. Moderate to severe COPD may significantly affect quality of life and mortality. Given that COPD's morbidity and mortality has been increasing in recent years, it would be greatly valuable to find an effective treatment for COPD. So this study hypothesized that H2 may be a unique, effective, and specific treatment for COPD by preventing its occurrence, exacerbation, and slowing its process. So here's where we come in, to look at some of the key factors in the development of COPD and examine how H2 can potentially benefit them. We are going to look at the benefits from two different angles, from the small scale or pathogenic side to really look at the underlying mechanisms of what makes COPD what it is, and from a larger scale, looking at how the bigger issues can affect COPD and how hydrogen can play a role. Starting out with the number one small scale topic, oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is widely proposed as a pathogenic mechanism for COPD. There is evidence of increased oxidative stress in the airways of patients with COPD. Oxidative stress may induce airway narrowing by constricting airway smooth muscles. To quote this study, oxidant-antioxidant imbalance in the lungs has been strongly implicated in COPD severity. Oxidative stress increased in COPD patients and chronic lung oxidative damage are key contributors to the pathogenesis of COPD, which includes mucus hypersecretion, heightened apoptosis, and chronic inflammation. Oxidative stress is considered to be an important therapeutic target in COPD. The evidence for H2 shows that it is effective for diseases related to oxidative stress. which may include COPD. Here we see that hydrogen suppressed oxidative stress, and here hydrogen alleviated oxidative stress damage in the lungs. To go even further, oxidants derived from cigarette smoke can induce DNA damage. But in this study, we see that hydrogen water decreased the levels of oxidative DNA damage markers, which in turn reduced the cigarette smoke-induced oxidative DNA damage in the lungs. To go even further than that, the oxidant peroxynitrate is reported to be highly correlated with COPD. But here it's suggested that H2 has antioxidant-like properties and protects against peroxynitrate. And here we see that H2 potentially reacts with the strong reactive nitrogen species peroxynitrate. And H2 also acted to restore transcriptional alterations induced by peroxynitrate. Due to its unique characteristics to eliminate toxic ROS, hydrogen therapy may be a novel and effective treatment for COPD. The next small-scale COPD topic is inflammation. COPD is also known as a systemic inflammatory disorder. It is characterized by abnormal inflammatory reaction of the lungs. Oxidative stress and airway inflammation together form a vicious cycle and is responsible for the progression of the disease. The airway remodeling characterizing COPD could be explained by the action of inflammatory stimuli. The activation of inflammatory mechanisms in the lungs can also lead to tissue damage. Okay, so how can H2 help? Here we see with hydrogen there was a significant inhibitory effect on the level of systemic inflammatory response. And here the results suggest that hydrogen inhalation with COPD alleviated inflammation through the inhibitory action of the number of inflammatory cells, the expression of inflammatory factors, or both. Next on our small-scale list is apoptosis. Apoptosis is cellular death. In our previous video, we discussed how H2 is shown to induce cancer cell death. So how can it benefit apoptosis for COPD? Well, apoptosis plays an important role in the development of COPD. According to this, apoptosis is important for eliminating excessive activated inflammatory cells and dead epithelial cells. While excessive apoptosis of the airways of alveolar epithelial cells may result in reduction of host defenses, apoptosis of airway epithelial cells is significantly increased in COPD. Here we see that H2 exerts an anti-apoptic effect by up or down regulating apoptosis-related factors. Here it suggests that hydrogen treatment can significantly reduce the number of apoptotic cells in the smoke-inhaled injury model. To quote this study, in the present study, abnormal apoptosis of airway epithelial cells was also observed in the lungs from chronic cigarette smoke exposure. But cigarette smoke-induced cell apoptosis was inhibited by hydrogen. This demonstrated the protective role of hydrogen on cigarette smoke-challenged lungs. Another way hydrogen can benefit the issue of cell death is with telomeres. As mentioned in our cancer video as well, telomeres are essentially the end caps of DNA. A decreased length in telomeres has been demonstrated in lung cells of COPD patients. Here it says that a correct telomere maintaining program in precursor cells is crucial to avoid degenerative disorders and anticipated aging, and short telomeres cause precursor cell failure in experimental systems. Essentially, telomere dysfunction may play a direct role in causing inflammation in COPD. According to this study, hydrogen water also increased telomerase activity. Increased telomerase activity caused by hydrogen water may be able to protect telomeres from degradation, suggesting the possible use of hydrogen water in therapeutic interventions of age-related diseases. And finally, this study demonstrated that hydrogen could reduce apoptosis in COPD. The next small-scale topic is cellular senescence. This is essentially the process in which cells are unable to reproduce or divide. Cellular senescence plays an important role in tissue repair or remodeling. However, it's been widely implicated in the pathogenesis of COPD. Senescence may even play a direct role in causing airway inflammation in COPD. Antioxidants derived from cigarette smoke can induce premature cellular senescence in the respiratory system, which plays a significant role in COPD. So on to the hydrogen. Here it says hydrogen water treatments could result in delayed cellular senescence. And also here we see hydrogen water reduce premature cellular senescence in the lungs. The next small scale topic is autophagy. Here's a brief summary of its role in COPD. Autophagy is a process of lysosomal self-degradation that maintains a homeostatic balance between synthesis, degradation, and recycling of cellular proteins. Autophagy diminishes with aging. Additionally, accelerated aging can be attributed to reduced autophagy. The possible participation of autophagy in the pathogenic sequence of COPD has been extensively explored. Although it has been reported that an increased autophagy may induce epithelial cell death, an insufficient reserve of autophagy can induce cellular senescence in the bronchial epithelial cells of COPD. However, oxidative stress can induce autophagy as well. If not controlled, excessive autophagy can result in cell death. And even here it says that excessive autophagy may stimulate a strong inflammatory response in the development of acute lung injuries. The study went on to conclude that the use of H2 aided in the reduction of excessive autophagy. And here it says that hydrogen may attenuate lung dysfunction by reducing autophagy. The last small scale topic is all about balance. Our bodies like to stay in homeostasis, or in essence, a balance. There are multiple imbalances that aid in the pathogenesis of COPD. We will go over a few here and how hydrogen could possibly help. A quick note about homeostasis. Under normal circumstances, cells are able to maintain an adequate homeostasis between the formation and removal of ROS through particular enzymatic pathways and antioxidants. But under some pathological conditions, the balance is disturbed, leading to oxidative stress in various diseases such as COPD. Here it also mentioned that genetic factors play a role in COPD and in the susceptibility to smoke. Molecular hydrogen has proven useful and convenient as a novel antioxidant and modifier of gene expression in many conditions where oxidative stress and changes in gene expression results in cellular damage. To name a couple examples of these imbalances, a protease/anti-protease imbalance plays an important role in the pathogenesis of COPD. And here it says oxidative stress can lead to a proteinase/anti-proteinase imbalance. However, here it says that it is likely that hydrogen can affect the protease/anti-protease balance by reducing the expression of inflammatory cytokines. Another imbalance is that elevated oxidants can promote inflammation by activating the NF-kappa B pathway. The finding of this study suggests hydrogen reduces airway inflammation and airway remodeling by inhibiting NF-kappa B. Here they notice an increased expression in NF-kappa B in the lung after smoke-inhaled injury. But the hydrogen treatment significantly decreased this trend. And finally, a quote from this study addressing the NRF2 pathway. Oxidative stress occurs when ROS are produced in excess of the antioxidant defense mechanism and cannot be scavenged in time. Mammal cells produce several antioxidant enzymes to defend them against oxidative damage. The transactivation of the majority antioxidant and defense gene is regulated by NRF2. Cigarette smoke, which contains a variety of oxidants, can activate NRF2. In this study, hydrogen downregulating the expression of cigarette smoke-induced NRF2 further implied that hydrogen protected the lungs against damage from cigarette smoke exposure by its antioxidant ability. So let's close out this topic and the overall small-scale category with this quote. Molecular hydrogen has proven to be a safe and useful approach to provide antioxidant and gene and activity regulating activities to cells, tissue, and whole organisms. Now to look at the large-scale issues related to COPD. We will start with the most obvious, smoking. We have already seen some quotes about cigarette smoke damage. Let's look a little bit deeper at the research behind that. Cigarette smoke is the leading cause of COPD. Take a look at this study where it says, smoking can cause COPD through several mechanisms. First, smoke is a powerful inducer of an inflammatory response. Inflammatory mediators, including oxidants and proteases, are believed to play a role in causing lung damage. In response to this damage, repair mechanisms are activated. These repair mechanisms may also be adversely affected by cigarette smoking. Now let's see what hydrogen can do. Here we see that hydrogen protected the lungs from cigarette smoke exposure damage. The results here suggested that hydrogen inhalation slowed the development of COPD-like lung disease in a cigarette smoke-induced model. And here it suggested that hydrogen ameliorated the pathological changes of the lungs due to cigarette smoke. It says here that hydrogen reduced structural impairment of the lungs in tobacco smoke-induced COPD. Also, an overproduction of mucus is an important feature in COPD. Oxidative stress plays a key role in abnormal mucus production induced by cigarette smoke. The study concluded that hydrogen reduced airway mucus production and epithelium damage induced by cigarette smoke. To sum it up, this study says, in conclusion, these results suggest that administration of hydrogen exhibits a significant protective effect on COPD through alleviating inflammation, reducing oxidative stress, and lessening mucus hypersecretion in tobacco smoke-induced COPD. Another large-scale topic to look at is smoke inhalation injury. To quote this study, inhalation injuries is caused by heat and or smoke respiratory damage and contributes to being the leading cause of death in intensive care units, with a mortality that has remained in the range of 10 to 20%. Airway damage is an important pathological change in the process of inhalation injury. The release of ROS, inflammation, and stress are important factors in inhalation injury as well. The results of the study determined that hydrogen diminished the lung damage induced by the injury. It concludes with this quote: "The results of this study demonstrated that hydrogen treatment exerted protective effects in acute lung injury induced by inhalation injury, at least in part through the activation of anti-inflammatory and antioxidant pathways and inhibition of apoptosis. Due to its safety, efficacy, and convenience, hydrogen treatment should be considered as a potential therapy for acute lung injury induced by inhalation injury." The next topic is environmental factors. Exposures other than cigarette smoke can contribute to the development of COPD. This includes harmful gases, particles, pollution, or chemicals. This study discusses the effects of this herbicide on the lungs. The toxicity of it leads to oxidative stress-related cell death and inflammation. Because of the selective accumulation in the lungs, it causes severe lung injury manifested by edema, hemorrhage, interstitial inflammation, and progressive fibrosis. The findings show that the consumption of hydrogen water reduced the severity of lung injury by this herbicide. The prevention of oxidative damage is a probable mechanism of hydrogen and protection of the lungs exposed to this herbicide. We also found a significant inhibition of cell apoptosis with the treatment of hydrogen water. This study even concluded that hydrogen is effective at preventing acute lung injury caused by the herbicide. Here is a conclusion of a study of hydrogen's effect on lungs exposed to air pollution. Inhalation of hydrogen gas could alleviate inflammation and oxidative stress of sanitation workers exposed to air pollution. There was even a significant inhibitory effect on the level of systemic inflammatory response. And finally, particles in the air can be one of the major burdens on the body, which can lead to disease. The particle eliminating and anti-allergic effects of hydrogen can reduce the burden on the body. Collectively, the results indicate that hydrogen water not only effectively eliminated particulate matter from the lungs and blood, but also attenuated the lung injuries. The next large-scale topic is lung injury. We know the damage caused from lung injuries can lead to COPD, though it's not the most common cause. However, it says here that H2 inhalation can attenuate lung injuries. Here it says that H2 can decrease lung graft injury. Recent studies have shown that 2% hydrogen can mitigate lung injuries through an anti-apoptotic effect and by inhibiting the expression of inflammatory cytokines. The research points to an even more specific lung injury that hydrogen may benefit. Medical ventilation, either invasive or non-invasive, is a life-saving measure in managing acute respiratory failure due to an acute exacerbation of COPD. However, invasive intubation and mechanical ventilation have been associated with significant morbidity and mortality. Mechanical ventilation can provoke oxidative stress and an inflammatory response, and subsequently cause ventilator-induced lung injury, a major cause of mortality and morbidity of patients in the intensive care unit. Here it states that hydrogen inhalation improves the ventilator-induced lung injury. This study concludes, our data demonstrated that hydrogen water consumption ameliorated one lung ventilation-induced lung injury, and it may exert its protective role by its anti-inflammation, antioxidation, and reducing NF-kappa B activity in the lung tissue. Next, we'll talk about the overall lung function. COPD severely affects the function of the lungs, but here we see hydrogen inhalation improves lung pathology and lung function. H2-rich water significantly restored the static lung compliance in this study. Likewise, here it says that the lung function test indicated hydrogen decreased lung airway resistance and increased lung compliance. It goes on to say, our results suggest that administration of hydrogen improved lung function and alleviated morphological impairments of the lung through alleviating inflammation, reducing oxidative stress, and lessening mucus hypersecretion. Lastly, it says hydrogen may reduce acute lung dysfunction by reducing inflammation, autophagy, and apoptosis. Finally, we come to our last large-scale benefit for COPD, which is really more about disorders related to COPD and how hydrogen can help. This study demonstrated that hydrogen water can attenuate cigarette smoke-induced emphysema. Hydrogen may also protect against pulmonary fibrosis by suppressing oxidative stress. Here we see that hydrogen reduces airway inflammation and remodeling with asthma. Also here it mentions that hydrogen can alleviate respiratory symptoms of asthma. And finally here it says that hydrogen inhalation could improve respiratory symptoms such as coughing. This brings me to an interesting point about the unique ability of hydrogen inhalation for COPD. Here's an interesting excerpt from this study. People have inhaled H2 for hundreds of years in diving, and it's already proven to be very safe for inhalation. Moreover, inhaled H2 can easily reach the lungs to play a therapeutic role. In addition, because of the special anatomical structure of the lungs, H2 can reach lung cells easily and quickly. Furthermore, if H2 inhalation is applied as a treatment, H2 will act on lungs directly, leading to a better therapeutic effect. In conclusion, as COPD has shown an increase in mortality in recent years, we hope that H2 will successfully control the TREAD due to its potential effect. Let's sum up all this information with these two quotes. In summary, inhalation of hydrogen can significantly reduce the level of inflammation and apoptosis, restore the protease/antiprotease balance, protect the mitochondria, and ameliorate the pathological structure of lung tissue, lung function, and cardiovascular function. Thus, this intervention may slow the development of COPD. Lastly, our study suggests that administration of molecular H2 may be a novel, preventative, and therapeutic strategy for COPD. Well, that's all I have for you. Do you think that H2 could be beneficial for COPD based on the evidence I presented? I would love to know your thoughts. Meet me back here in 2 weeks for the next installment in the series about accidents. Be sure to share this video and to subscribe to our channel. Support us on Patreon and get behind-the-scenes access and extra perks. We need your support to help spread the word of hydrogen and hopefully helping people to breathe a little easier. And that's your dose of H2.